Hi, my name is Philip Wong. Today I want to give you a quick tutorial about lens whacking. Now this process of lens whacking is also known as freelensing. It has become quite the rage to try and get that nice, lovely, dreamy look. And although lens whacking sounds like something where you're smashing lenses, let me assure you it's not. And even though lens whacking also does sound like a euphemism for something else, again, it's not. Now, lens whacking, like a lot of artistic endeavors, is very easy to get started. It's very easy to learn. It's very easy to do, but of course, it's very hard to actually get it right. And it's going to require quite a fair bit of practice. Now, the nice thing about the Canon cameras is they come with a HDMI mini port, so I can use a field viewer so I can show you exactly what I'm doing during this tutorial. The first thing you want to do is set it to manual, because what you're really doing here by removing the lens is that the connectors that are here are no longer able to communicate directly with the body, so you're going to need complete control over every single element of the camera. This will include setting the stabilizer to off and setting the lens to manual focus. The next thing you want to do is set the focus ring all the way to infinity and leave it at infinity, because you're going to actually be doing all of this with your hands and not actually with the focus ring. Now, one of the things you should be deciding before you start shooting the video is what frames per second you'll be using. I shoot at 25 frames per second generally, and so that means that the shutter speed is going to have to be double that, meaning 50 frames per second. The other thing that you want to also decide is about the aperture. The aperture should be as wide open as you can possibly get it, meaning that the number should be as low as possible. This is also going to depend on your taste and also the amount of light that you want around there. Remember that the smaller the aperture, and hence the higher the number, the more field of depth that you're going to get. But part of the whole reason of lens whacking is that you want to try and play with this with some things that are in focus and other things that are out of focus in this really weird and dreamy way. So generally you want to try and dial that all the way down and then detach the lens, because you can't do it once it's already detached. And now for the magic. All you simply do is remove the lens. The first thing that will happen, you will see, is that the sensor will be protected by the mirror. So you're going to need to raise the mirror by pressing the red button on the back. Then all you do, holding the lens in your left hand and the camera body in your right, is you put these two together, but they don't actually connect. And you use your hands to separate the camera body and the lens to give yourself that beautiful focus that you want. Because you're holding the lens independently of the body, you've now got 2 degrees of freedom, meaning that you're getting an awful lot of shake from both the lens and the camera body at the same time. This is part of that beautiful look, dreamy views that you get as part of lens whacking, but it's also quite frustrating because you're going to get an awful lot of camera shake. You're going to need to be able to control this somehow, otherwise your audiences are going to end up vomiting with seasickness. Now the trick here is to try and pull focus, holding the lens separate of the body. That means that if you want to try and focus on something that's very close up, you're going to need to pull the lens away from the body. But if you're trying to focus on something in the distance, you're going to try and put it much, much closer to what it was originally. The thing I love about this technique is that it pretty much turns any lens into an absolute killer macro lens with this beautiful light splashing across the screen. We've got these lovely flares as the light leaks directly onto the sensor. But at the same time too, there's a lot of camera shake, so it's very, very difficult to control. Like I said, it's very easy to get started, but it's very hard to perfect. Next thing you want to notice here is that if you can tilt the lens left and right, you'll be able to get these weird effects where some parts are in focus and others are not. It's kind of like a tilt-shift camera, but without paying all those millions of dollars. It's much, much better to have a lens that has a smaller shoe. So in other words, a lens that's not designed for the camera that you're using. So this means that if you're using Canon, you can use Nikon lenses, because you want to try and use something that gives you a little bit of freedom as to move around here. I found that with the kit lenses here that fit snugly straight on here, that I tend to be, you know, the mounts are knocking each other through, and it's just not an enjoyable experience. Again, whatever camera you have is the one that you're going to be using. Getting better equipment doesn't necessarily make you a better filmmaker. This is the sort of thing that you really need to learn by just pulling the lens off, having a go, seeing what works for you. But I want to give you a few tips as you're going through. Camera shake was something that annoyed the living hell out of me. So I found that when I'm using this as a macro lens, what I want to be doing is I want to be on a table and I want to be nice and close up, and I want to have lots of points of stability. I want to be sitting down, I want both elbows on the table so that I can get it nice and right, just about there. The next thing I found is that dust is a big problem. You don't really want to be shooting outside when it's terribly windy or dusty. And of course, this is the sort of time when you do want to be actually using this, because usually you want to be using this for something like dream sequences or some point where people are running around laughing. You get this really happy look when you're using lens whacking. And this is exactly the time when your cameras are going to be prone to basically getting dust and all sorts of muck inside of them. So be careful. Most people on the web have said that you should put the lens in your left hand like this, the body on top of that, and then using your right hand, cup the whole thing and hold it to your chest so that you can hold it with a fair bit of stability. If you've got a Canon which comes with the flip out viewfinder, that's a lot more helpful. I personally didn't like this very much. I found it terribly cumbersome and my hand shake an awful lot, but I found a different way that seemed to work a lot better for me personally. I am a huge fan of desk tripods. They are just wonderful. They're easy to transport, they're cheap to purchase. I think mine cost me about $19 or so, and this one is really sturdy. Now I tend to shoot with a hand grip as well, so having a hand grip and also having the tripod is actually not a good idea, but recently I discovered that pretty much most tripods will unscrew from here, and this means that I'm able to screw the tripod head on like so, the hand grip underneath that with the 1/4 inch screw, which is the standard for photography, and then screw the tripod underneath. Having a full-blown tripod is usually very cumbersome when you're trying to duck in and out of crowds and you're knocking people all the time, but having a desk tripod is usually enough. Another thing I love about the desk tripods is that you're able to extend the legs just enough so that you can use it as a chest tripod. This is quite a comfortable pose to be shooting all day, all the time. And of course, when you're shooting films, this is also quite comfortable as well. And it's actually close enough that you can pull focus without too much of a problem. Now I found that when I'm using the chest tripod, I'm able to get a really steady shot on both the camera and the lens. I've got both hands on the lens and I don't need to worry about the body so much because it's held both by the camera strap and also the tripod that's strapped against my chest. Other things to notice here is that you really won't be using the viewfinder while you muck around with your lenses here. So basically turn that screen on the back of your camera on, or in my case, I found it was far more accurate to use a field monitor because these dodgy screens on the back of these dodgy cameras never quite give you the view that's actually coming to your SD card. But using a field monitor gives you fantastic vision. Another great tip is to be able to just use the cap, put that back on, and then whack your lenses. This is going to give you a black background, which you can then just create random light spill patterns, which of course you are able to key out and then use however you like in post. Of course, you'll find that you'll be able to get different effects by using different types of lights as you find them around the house. Try using the sun. So that was lens whacking. It's a lot of fun, it's very easy, it's a very simple technique. It is a big risk to your camera, so make sure that you're only going to play with a sensor and lenses that you're happy to lose if you drop them or make a small mistake of, say, sneezing onto them. If you found this a very useful video, make sure to share it with your friends, like, and even subscribe to this channel. You can find me on Facebook, you can tweet me, the links are in the doobly-doo below. Thank you very much for watching. Happy study, guys.